Hi, it's Frank with Pool Works, North Richland Hills in Lantana, and also I'm the host of the Deep End. That's our podcast on Turfs Up Radio. You can find it on all your favorite podcast platforms. Today I want to talk to you about how to manage your pool, keep your costs down with the cost of pool chemicals just going through the roof. There's really not much relief in sight. So the first thing I want to talk about is borates. Borates is a product that you add to the water. It's a large dosage up front. The initial dosage is it's quite a bit of product. It's typically about 3 pounds per 1,000 gallons. You have to get your borate levels up to about 50 to 60 parts per million for the borates to be the most effective. But what borates does is it softens the water. It makes the water easier on the skin, easier on the eyes. It stabilizes your pH. It resists decline in pH. So your water balance is easier to manage with borates in the water. Another thing it does is it's a clarifier. Borate they change the tension of the water, so things that would typically be suspended and just floating into the water and making the water look cloudy or possibly a little hazy, it allows those things to sink out. So what we found in the pools that we have on borates is the water clarity is better than it's ever been, and the customers are really enjoying it. But the best thing about borates is it's an algae stat. I'm sure everybody's heard of algicides. Well, algicides kill algae. But what an algae stat does is an algae stat prevents algae from multiplying. So that's what borates does for your pool, because you're never going to be able to keep algae from getting into your water. Every time the wind blows, every time it rains, you're going to get some algae in your water. So, but what happens though is when this algae blows into your pool or rains down into your pool, it starts multiplying. And your chlorine's there trying to kill this algae, and that's the purpose of your sanitizers, is to kill the algae. But the algae gets in the water and it multiplies faster than your chlorine can kill it. So, and that's why a pool can go from blue to green in just a matter of a day, because say it rained 1 million spores of algae into your pool, and that algae starts multiplying, and say 1 million spores becomes 2 million, 4 million, 8 million, 16 million, it just on and on and on. And that's how your pool can quickly go from a pretty blue pool to green in just a day or two. So, but borates resist that growth. So the little bit of chlorine that you keep in your pool is able to kill the algae faster than it multiplies, because without the borates in the water, the algae is multiplying, and you end up using all your chlorine up until your chlorine just is completely dissipated, and then algae just has free reign, and the water quickly changes from good to bad. So, but borates, we've been using on our pool, our service pools, and we're gradually switching all of our pools that we have on service. We're switching all of them over to borates, and we still use regular chlorine or salt pools. And by the way, borates works with salt pools and regular chlorine pools. But what we have found is we're using 40 to 60% less chlorine on the pools that we have on borates, and that's a huge savings. Even for the average homeowner, the cost of chlorine has just gone through the roof. But if you can stretch that same chlorine though, and you can make it go much further, then it's going to keep your costs more reasonable and manageable. So borates is the number one answer, in my opinion. It's the number one thing you can do for your pool and to keep your costs down during this time of just escalating prices. But after the initial dosage, we typically can treat up to a 20,000 gallon pool for about $300 with a borate treatment. But after that initial dosage, the borates stay in the water. You'll lose a little bit through splash out, backwashing, stuff like that. You may have to top it off with 5 or 10 pounds once or twice, or maybe even 3 times a year if we have a very wet year. But that's all you do. There's no electricity, there's no parts, there's no equipment that you have to purchase. It's a one-time add into your pool, and then you just have to top it off with 5 or 10 pounds, a couple, 3 times a year, and the savings, you'll probably realize the savings the first year. I'm sure, because I know we do on the pools that we service. We realize a huge savings in our chlorine usage. But the next year, you've already got the borates in the water, and you just have to continue to top off. So year after year after year, borates continues to pay for itself, and the pools, they never look better. They're easier to manage, and your cost drops significantly to operate your pool. Other things that you can do, there's like AOP systems. AOP system, what they are is we sell products called Clear Comfort. This is a product. It's equipment. You install it on your pool system, and it uses UV and ozone, and it creates hydroxyl radicals. What a hydroxyl radical is it's an extremely effective oxidizer. So it injects these hydroxyl radicals into your plumbing, and it destroys anything that's in the water as the water's passing through the system. And then that takes a lot of the load also off your chlorine. And with a Clear Comfort system, you can run extremely low levels of chlorine. Like borates, we can run lower levels of chlorine with borates, and it saves us a lot of money, and our chlorine goes much, much further. With a AOP system, creating the hydroxyl radicals, our chlorine even goes much, much further. Now, a AOP system, like I said, it is a piece of equipment. It does consume a little bit of electricity, and it's something that it does take a little bit of maintenance. You have to replace bulbs on it occasionally, but a AOP system with borates, you're going to use so little bit of chlorine, just a tiny little bit of chlorine, and you're going to be able to manage your pool great. And it's going to be easier to manage. It's going to be more comfortable for swimmers, and your problems are going to be reduced immensely. So, and salt systems. I know a lot of people are wanting to go to salt systems right now. What a salt system does is basically you turn your water to salt water, and a salt system converts the salt into sodium and chlorine. All right, you have to install the system. You have a cell that sells typically in our area of North Texas. Cells will typically last 3 to 5 years, but you have to replace those. Average cost on those is probably around $1,000 to replace. With salt system, I'll be happy to install a salt system for anybody if that's what they want to do. But typically when people come to me and they say they want to install a salt system, I tell them, you know what? How about we put your pool on borates? Because it has no equipment, it has no maintenance things that you have to clean or manage or parts to replace, and do a season on borates. And after you do a season on borates, if you still want to go salt, we'll be more than happy to put a salt system on for you. But what I believe, even with the escalating cost of pool chemicals, I don't believe a salt system after you purchase the product and then you have replacement parts and energy consumption to make the system operate. I don't believe it's much more than break even, if it is break even. So I like salt systems. I'm not totally against salt systems, but I just don't think it's not the bang for the buck that the customer expects. Yes, they get the soft water, and a lot of people enjoy that. We can do that with borates. So come talk to me. If you're considering doing a salt system, come talk to me. If you want to go salt, I'll be more than happy to help you out and get you a salt system installed. But I really recommend that you try borates before you do that. There's also ozone systems and there's UV systems. Those do help. They reduce the load on chlorine, but again, they do have replacement parts. They do consume electricity. It does help stretch your chlorine a little further. So UV, ozone, those are other products that you might want to consider. But the number one step, if you really want to do something, the most cost-effective thing I believe you can do to make your pool owning experience much, much better is borates. And then just a little bit of chlorine. If you want to do borates with salt, that works great. borates with UV, borates with ozone, borates with AOP. I love AOP systems. That's the closest thing we'll ever get to a chlorine-free pool is AOP. AOP with borates, just a tiny little bit of chlorine. And that's I think that's the magic ticket right there. But borates is a no-brainer. Everybody needs to get their pool on borates. It's changing the industry. It's cutting the chlorine usage. So, but anyway, give us a call, 817-919-0247. Check out my podcast, The Deep End. It's on Turfs Up Radio, or you can find it on all the major podcast platforms. We discuss borates a lot, but anyway, give us a call, come see us. We'd be happy to answer any of your questions.